Yes.
Would be like to watch out.
Did you? Oh, I think.
This new system's way better.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call this town meeting to order. I don't see that, he has joined us yet. He said he would join by Zoom. That's why they got all this set up, but I don't see him online yet. Okay, so before we get started, I was telling, Jean, just before we got started, I was gonna tell Leroy and Misty, but I didn't have a chance because you walked in right when we were ready to start. When I was at the ULCT conference last week, they, there was a seminar, a little session that was presented by the attorney for the ULCT. And he indicated that when we have meetings and we are voting on something, that everyone needs to explain why they're voting the way they're voting. And that, and in fact, our motions to approve or deny, we're gonna have to change, but we'll discuss that between now and the next town council meeting, not today. But we will need to say why we're voting the way we're voting, and he explained why. That if there's ever a lawsuit, that one of the main issues is what was in the mind of the town council, and the attorneys cannot adequately represent a town in a lawsuit if they don't know why what the town council is thinking. And because there is a possibility of such a thing with today's hearing, we have to be absolutely, everyone needs to say why they're voting the way they're voting. That's all I was gonna say about that, and the rest of it that has to do with making motions, I will talk about between now and next town council meeting so that we can know what we're gonna end up with a format that we'll be following for making motions, and I'll draft something up and show it to you all. So that's all I want to mention about that, so be prepared to say why you're gonna vote the way you are. Next, on the item on the agenda is a declaration of conflict of interest, and as you all know that were here last time, that I have a conflict of interest and will not be voting because of my conflict of interest on item C. And so there will be you four that will be voting and giving your reasons why you're voting the way you are. So let's move on and get straight into item C, which is discussion and recommendation to approve or not. Oh, yeah. We talked about it last time, and unless someone has a conflict of interest that's come up in the last week or two, but if you have a conflict of interest, Paul.
No conflict of interest.
What about you, Jean?
No.
Paul, Leroy?
No.
Misty?
I still need to recuse myself from item D. For the discussion.
Oh, okay,
So
just D.
yeah, just D. And that reason is because I was sitting on the planning and zoning as the chair, actually, when that one passed.
You said D.
D.
D is in dog. Okay, so moving on to item C, discussion and recommendation to approve or deny the zone change for the subdivision Zion's Edge, which is currently rural residential. And we are adding, this zone changes to add the short-term rental overlay to that proposed subdivision. So we will discuss, and then I will, even though it does not say this on the agenda, my usual, taking any public comment, and then we will vote. So discussion among town council.
On item C, it says it passed would make the subdivision a short-term rental. It just gives them the ability to do it. This is make it.
Okay,
They become a short-term overlay district, it's a zone change. It passes, so,
I understand it's a zone change, but they don't have to do that. They could
yeah,
just-
true, but it's like any zone change, you could do.
I'm not saying it's not a zone change. I'm just saying they don't have to do that. If they want to.
Yeah, I know, you're saying they don't have to rent it as short-term rental.
That's just all I'm saying.
The way it's written, it just says it passes, makes it subdivision short-term rental, doesn't make it makes it short-term rental eligible. The person come and buy the home and live in it, or they can do this. Have the option. If that. Or are you gonna have Mr. Campbell read this and say?
yeah, I was waiting till we were all done. And then take any public comment. Is there no more discussion? That's it?
Well, I might as well surprise, I'll do a little bit of discussion, there are a couple. Well, no, let me discuss it after I hear all the public testimony,
Okay, all right.
then I'll discuss it.
Okay, that's fine. All right, then, public comment, if there's any public comment on this, and I know that, Lauren, you had something you want to read to the town council.
My name is Lauren Campbell, and I live here in Virgin, and will be one of the closest neighbors to Zion's Edge subdivision. I have two concerns I would like for the town council to address. I'm beginning with the fact that the town of Virgin Planning and Zoning and Town Council have not indicated in the ordinance that they have a finding that all conditions outlined below have been fully complied with all the requirements of Blue 6002, which include in part. I'm just going to shorten some of what my written statement was. At the subdivision concept plan review stage of the approval process, that the applicant submitted with their concept plan a narrative indicating that an STR development overlay zone is being requested, and the concept plan shall include the following information. I'm going to read that. The town shall not approve an STR overlay zone designation for development unless it finds the following 6 things. That the proposed zoning designation on a development-wide basis at this particular location is necessary or desirable to provide a service or facility which will contribute to the general well-being of the neighborhood and community. And that a development-wide short-term rental use of dwelling units will not, under the circumstances of the particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity, or injurious to property or improvement in the vicinity. That the proposed zoning designation and development of dwelling units as STR units on a development-wide basis is expressly authorized by the governing documents of the development, i.e. CC&Rs and bylaws of the homeowners association. And that the governing documents of the development require owners of an STR development to utilize one singular property management company determined by the homeowners association to handle all STR renting of the STR units within the development. The designated property management company shall maintain current contact information for persons within the company who are capable of being contacted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In the event the town or local law enforcement are notified of an issue or a complaint, that needs resolution. And the proposed zoning designation and development of unit does not conflict with the general plan, no issue with that. So I propose that you add a following recital to the ordinance. Whereas the town has reviewed all of the requirements and findings outlined in the town's universal land use Lulu 6002 and find the application met all of those requirements. It's not an or, it's gotta be all of them. And my other concern is that having lived in a community in Palm Desert where short-term rentals were a real thing, noise and parties were also a real thing. And I had a personal conversation with John Staples, who related that when he rented his personal home here in Virgin to somebody from, I believe it was Red Bull Rampage, his words were they destroyed his house. So I would like the council to please describe in detail what actions a resident should take when behavior occurs that affect the quiet enjoyment of our community, and what actions can be taken to stop the behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. I know there were some people who were at the planning commission last night and during the public hearing on this and made some statements, but we don't, unfortunately, we do not have the minutes because it's just too clean to have the minutes that indicate what statements were made.
You have Cameron here.
That's where I did like that.
Ah, Cameron, I didn't see that you came in. Thank you.
Sorry, I was a little late. The public comment, there was one public comment at the meeting last night. And the concern for them was the traffic, the additional traffic, the dust and the dust that would be created from the construction. And the I don't know how to, what would you say, the flood waters, the diversion of the washes that are there, and how they're going to control the flood waters. That was the concern expressed last night.
And that was it.
That was it. One comment last night. It was. What's the lady? Yeah, Joanne.
Okay, Heath has now joined the meeting. Can you hear me, Heath?
I can. I apologize. We've had network problems all morning. I've been here since 7. We just barely got our routers back up and working, so.
Okay, I just want to make sure you could hear us and that we could speak, that we could hear you. Okay. So we just got started on discussion and recommendation to approve or deny this zone change for the short-term rental overlay. Lori Campbell just read a statement that he had prepared. I don't think you heard that because you were not online then. So I don't think you heard it.
I didn't. I just heard the end of Cameron's explanation, I think, on, but I don't even know if I heard the beginning where what the ultimate recommendation from the planning commission was.
Why don't you repeat? I know you talked about what was the comment, the public comment, but why don't you tell us what was the recommendation from the planning commission for the benefit of everyone in the room and for Heath?
Okay, yeah, so we had one public comment that I mentioned with those concerns. We discussed those concerns as far as the dust that should be controlled by the developer, and any complaints for that should go to the town so that the developer can be contacted to remedy the situation. They should be watering for dust, anything like that. As far as the concern about the drainage, we have detailed drawings that were signed off by the town engineer. to indicate that they are taking care of any drainage issues and water issues that might come from a flood. There was an original drainage plan. Our engineer asked for some amendments, they made those amendments, and then the town engineer approved those plans. And then as far as the traffic, we have the traffic study back. And it indicated that the roads that were there could handle the traffic, the extra traffic from this current subdivision.
Including the bridge.
Including the bridge, yes. That's my understanding.
And without any reduction in service level?
No, because
So no meaning, no reduction in service.
I can't remember the percentage that they said that this. So it's difficult because the study involved
Right.
both of the subdivisions, but even with both of the subdivisions on the. What was it, like 30%? Like, it would meet like up to 30% of the capacity of the road.
So it's still probably a level C.
I don't know the levels, and I just know that the study came back, the engineer said we were okay with it. And for some reason, 30% capacity is what comes to my mind.
Thank you, Cameron.
Who was the engineer? Do you remember?
I do not know who the engineer was, I do not remember who the engineer was. It looks like it was. Flat LLC. That's civil. Oh, that's not a traffic study. I'm sorry, I'm not sure that out. And then as far as our recommendation, the recommendation from the planning commission was to recommend approval of the vote was unanimous.
Okay, any discussion from town council members?
Yeah, before we take the vote, since it's going to relate to the vote a little bit. Mayor, I know you mentioned that you would like all of us to discuss why we take a vote a certain way. I'm never going to have a problem with that.
I know, but that's why I said, you already do that anyway.
I listened to bits and pieces last night of the planning board hearing through the Zoom. And it's my normal practice to do so, but it's usually with the tape from YouTube. So I'm hoping that because I have different interruptions, I can get a chance to hear all of it. That's why I said bits and pieces of the hearing, and I did get the part about the recommendation. So I'm hoping in the future that we do get some tape that we can go back and listen to. I think, Crystal, you said that's going to be a possibility. Once we, okay, yeah, so that would be good for the future and have it beforehand. The reason I wanted to have the discussion before we actually take the vote is because I have some proposed amendments, and it's based upon some of the testimony from Lauren and from the previous letters that we received on this issue for amendments to what I suspect will be the motion. And if I can count noses correctly, I'm pretty sure this is going to pass. I want to tell you, I'm going to oppose this subdivision. I'll lay out my reasons why. So I'm going to end up voting no on the motion. But I am proposing some amendments, and I know councils in the past would hate when a council member would make an amendment that would pass, make an amendment that would pass, and then vote no on the final resolution. So I'm telling you up front that I'm going to vote no, so you can weigh that and whether you want to vote for those amendments. So you're not voting on an amendment just to get my vote for this approval or not. So the amendments that I will be proposing are take a step back, there's usually numerous things that we hear with short-term rentals. And we're experiencing most of those complaints here in Virgin from different people, and that is noise, lighting, parking on the street, so on-street parking instead of off-street parking, and trash. The one that I haven't really heard in Virgin is the trash issue. And our lighting issue, it sounds like to me, that's more on enforcement. I'm gonna look at our lighting ordinance, and it appears that if we enforce our own lighting ordinance, that would solve some of the complaints. So the big ones that I'm hearing are loud noise and parking on the street when there's too many vehicles. So that's what these conditions relate to. The first one condition I will propose is that no rooftop decks on houses that are designated for short-term rental. So a lot of noise is when you have parties on the deck on a roof higher up. That creates a lot of noise that spreads all over that subdivision and into the next subdivision. So I will propose that as an amendment to the motion, unless somebody includes that in their motion. The other with on-street parking, usually what happens is you end up with too many cars, depending on how many people show up at a short-term rental. You'll end up with many cars in on-street parking. And if you're in a subdivision that they're all short-term rentals, you would think, well, that's no problem because it's not affecting anybody. But the concern I would have is if the individuals that are renting that house, and they could be younger families with kids, the kids running out in between cars and getting hit by somebody. And from my own personal experience, I had a friend in high school that had just learned to drive, just got done learning how to drive, and that same thing happened to him. He was driving and hit a young child that started between two cars that nobody saw. Nobody's fault. Fortunately, the little kid was a child, and of course they're flexible and survived, and he was going slow. But that would be a concern, getting too many cars on the street. So what I would propose as an amendment to what I perceive as the possible motion, or if somebody wants to add it, is to design and build an additional off-street parking spot for houses designated for short-term rental. And we don't have the plans of what those houses are looking like. I don't know if they're gonna be 2-car garages, 3-car garages. So I think maybe the best way is just design and build an additional off-street parking spot for houses designated for short-term rental. So I'd ask that whoever makes motion to include those. If they don't, I will make a motion to amend.
Mayor, may I ask a question of Paul on those amendments?
Sure.
Paul, one thing that I have seen other municipalities do on a requirement for additional off-street parking, they tie it to the size or the number of bedrooms in the unit. And so, you know, if you've got a 2-car garage and you've got a driveway, you know, but you've got a 6-bedroom house, they might require something like 2 additional off-street parking locations, which means they may have to pour a wider driveway or something like that.
My original thought was going to be to require 3 off-street parking spots. And if more than 4 bedrooms, then an additional parking spot for every additional 2 bedrooms or fraction thereof. So you got 4 bedrooms, you got a requirement of a minimum of 3 off-street parking spots. And then up to 2, you would have another one. And then if you go to 7, you would have another one after that. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's very similar to what I've seen other municipalities do.
And that was my original thought, but I was trying to weigh it between that and not seeing what kind of plans they had for the houses. So I do like the second proposal.
Is that it for you? Okay, any other comments?
A couple, I wanted to address, yeah, I have their microphones, I want to address, at least one of these things that Lauren has brought up. Hey, thanks. Lauren, in answer to your question, how we're gonna keep this from becoming out of hand, there's already stuff in place on that, it's in chapter 60. Sections G and H, there's complaint processes, there's, that goes right into what you're talking about, and it involves the representative, the management company, and the town together to work through whatever problems those are. And look at chapter G or chapter 60 G 2, 3, and 4, and then section H. That all has to do with.
Is this in 60.02?
Why did I say that?
You just said 60.
Let me see. Yes, 60.02. I'm sorry.
Okay,
May I ask a question?
yes.
I did review that, but it doesn't really show any enforcement provisions. So, what happens if we call the police, which is normally what you do at 11 o'clock at night, because that's usually when you get the complaints. I'm not gonna call Eugene, I'm not gonna call the mayor at 11 o'clock at night, but that's usually when you call.
If you're talking for in the moment, that's probably going to be your answer, but in the long term, fixing problems, if there's a continual issue, this is the process that it goes through, and that STR can be removed.
My experience is when the police come out, unless there's a violation of a code like noise or light, there's no, they don't have any ability to actually do anything.
Right.
There's no fines, there's no enforcement.
I get that, but let's get through the scenario since you're doing what if.
Yeah.
Let's say that you have a problem because someone's got music too loud and you complain to the police, and you call again the next night, you complain to the police. This happens 2 or 3 times in a row, or whatever your limit is. And you come to the town and say, look, I've called multiple times. We can verify with the police department that we're having an issue with that. We can call in the management company and say, we have legitimate complaints about this issue. You need to resolve it, or we're gonna yank your STR designation, which is what it's supposed to be. We're gonna yank your option to be able to run these as short-term rentals. There's never gonna be an in-the-moment thing other than calling the police. Like you said, there's nobody's gonna call around and bother, somebody in bed at night. But there is stuff in place to remove that if it's being abused.
Okay.
Now, they have to be legitimate, obviously. I mean, I doing enforcement for the past 4 years in town, I can tell you, we get a lot of just silly stuff. People are upset because their neighbor's tree is hanging too far over their fence, or things that are kind of not really the town's problems. But this kind of stuff, if it's legitimate, we'll deal with it.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with my neighbors, but two of the houses in the neighborhood that were party houses, there were constant complaints. The police were out there every weekend almost. And it was a real problem.
I do want to note, just as a comment as well, I know Paul said he's getting complaints on loud noise and parking as being big issues. From my point on short-term rentals, we have 1 or 2. Crystal, how many short-term rental units or residential hosting do we have in this town? Legal or illegal? How many do we have?
I like that laugh, Keith.
Well, we know there's some that are out of control.
Currently on the website, it shows 78 short rentals.
Okay,
I
that's
only
what
have 17 business for them, and that's 1 short-term rental, the rest are residential ones.
Okay. I just want to take the total number and tell you, I get 1 or 2 complaints maybe a year. And it's generally the same person that's angry with a neighbor. But the majority of these people don't even know they're in our town. They're quiet, they come in, they stay the night and they leave. So I don't want to blow things out of proportion because there's something coming in. Now granted, these are a little different, but again, none of us know because we do not have an operating short-term rental subdivision in place right now. This town doesn't have one. There's 3 of them that have applied, 1 that's applied and gotten, and 3 more that have applied. But nothing's been built. We do not know what the effect is going to be. And it may be negative, it may be positive, but to jump the gun and say the town's going to go to hell in a handbasket is just as silly as to say the town's going to be a nirvana for people coming in. We don't know. So we have to give a little bit of leeway to see how it's going to operate. On the rooftop decks, I just want to tell you, I'm opposed to that one only for this reason. Just because a house has the designation for short-term rental does not mean that it's going to be purchased and used as such. Observation Estates over here, I know at least one of the houses, there's somebody buying it that just wants to live there. So now we're saying, well, you can live in your home, but you can't have this deck in the off chance that someday you sell it becomes a short-term rental. I would rather put our weight on the management companies. I mean, we're gonna hold them to hold their feet to the fire versus start regulating the homeowner on what they can do, because it's not a homeowners association requirement that they have in their deal. Now, if they want to put that in there and the developer wants to work with the town and say, hey, we want to do this, I'm okay with that, but I don't think the town should impose that on the other. I do think the parking on off-street parking is a good idea, just because big houses can take up a lot of space, especially if you get somebody that lives all their family and uncles and aunts and cousins in the same house, you can quickly override the street, so. That's all the comments I can.
Mayor, one thing, if I could, to Gene's comments, is that I have seen in other municipalities, one of the requirements, I don't believe that ours has it, but that in the CCNRs, the management company be given the unilateral right to immediate eviction of nightly rental tenants. So what that means is that if there is a nuisance problem, that not only can we have law enforcement, but that the a management company can take steps to make these people vacate immediately or stand to lose deposits and things like that. And that's something that I have seen as this type of concept, these short-term rental development ordinances have been getting passed by other municipalities. That's a newer item or requirement that we didn't have in ours. And I find it a helpful tool to answer that residents' question about what happens if there is a problem. Obviously, the city, if they're notified, they contact the management company and say, there's a there's a party or noise or whatever, you go out there and you threaten, we want that either to stop or you to evict them.
I think that's a good idea.
That's just what I was about to say. Very good idea.
If people stand to lose a couple $1,000 deposit, they're, and plus the ability to stay the remaining 4 or 5 days, there's usually a pretty decent incentive to turn down the music or whatever it might be.
Anything else from you, Gene?
I'll just add, having run one for a couple of years now, what I've seen as I've traveled and went to other places, I always stay in Airbnbs when I travel so that I can gain ideas and see what problems are and whatnot. The biggest problem I see is if there's not appropriate management in place for him, not just management personnel, but in regulations. The people that are staying in these things, their main desire, which is silly as can be, as silly as it sounds to us that are older, their main desire is to get that 5-star review on their name, so that when they go to rent someplace else they want to go to, the person they're renting to, the person they're renting from looks at that and says, I'm willing to let that person into my establishment. When people start getting low stars, as it were, low ratings, nobody wants to rent to them. So if they want to stay in a nice place, they have to keep that up. So enforcing that with regulations saying we don't tolerate these things, and then there's heavy penalties if they do, is usually more than enough. And again, it depends on what you're doing. We're attracting, in our small one, we're attracting couples, maybe 2 couples at the most. If you're opening it up to be a party house, that's another deal. You start bringing in, sticking a K to buy or whatever the group is that comes in that wants to party, that's going to mess up it's going to mess everybody up. But if they're renting, specifically targeting families or individuals that are traveling to Zion, that's all in the preparation for it. I want to put it out that it isn't something we have to be afraid of. We just have to manage it on the front end, and the town is working with the developers to make sure that we do that. That should be our goal. Yep.
Yes, I was just about to ask if either of we wanted to come up and comment, but I was, okay.
John Staples, and there's a couple of things I want to address from a personal point of view, because what Lauren brought up is 100% true. And a couple of things from the development side. One, I have coordinated with, getting old. Jason Christiansen, Jeff Lee, Robert and Reed, who are doing the development on the Mesa, and Justin is on what used to be the Pocketville Road. And we've all determined we're gonna use the same management company, because it could be a real hassle for someone like Lauren to try to track down who the management company is for all three of these developments. Now, obviously, Justin's on the Pocketville Road isn't gonna affect Lauren, but it might affect you. And so we met on several occasions, we met, all of us. And we decided we're gonna pick one management company. And we're doing our best. I can't guarantee this, but we're doing our best to find a local representative to work for that management company, so that it's someone you can get a hold of easy, because they live in Virgin. We have not gotten that far. I won't tell you that we have, but we're trying. And we had to, my son Jeff has talked to, I believe, 4 different management companies. We haven't decided who's gonna be the best. Second thing I wanted to address is my house up on the Collab Road. I had it as a vacation rental for, I believe it was 2 years. And then I had it as a bed and breakfast for a couple of years, licensed in both occasions through the county, because I am just over the border from the city of Virgin, so I'm in the county. And we rented that thing because the house is pretty big. We rented it to giant families. And out of all those 2 years, and I was renting it during the spring, summer and fall, I was renting that thing like crazy. And I never had one complaint from any of the neighbors, and the neighbors really know how to get a hold of me, because they're my sisters and my dad. But I did have on one occasion, a fellow called me, and it was listed on VRBO and whatever that other one is. My wife did it, I don't remember the name of the company, but it's like VRBO. And told me that he and his family were coming to Zion. They rented my house. My sister called me on the second night and said, "Hey, do you know you have a bunch of kids in your house?" And I said, "No." So they had rented it for a couple of nights. My wife and I went out to clean it the next morning. My sister said there were 21 kids from Red Bull, and they trashed my house. My sisters didn't ever hear any garbage from them, so I didn't get a complaint about that, but it was thousands of dollars of damage in the house. And that was the only occasion out of those years that I rented it. And I'm not gonna say that we had one real estate group that came and rented it from Las Vegas. They were all Spanish-speaking realtors, and that's what they focused on in Las Vegas. And they actually invited my family for a great big food thing that they did, fiesta thing. And we had a lot of positive experiences, especially the ones that came from overseas, you know, that families from overseas that would come and rent it. It was a lot of fun. And the other issue that Lauren didn't talk about, but he has spoken with me about, is access. Because everybody that lives in Rio de Sion, not everybody, but a lot of them, like to have access through there to the BLM. And we're looking at this thing, and obviously we're not the builders of the homes. We are the developer, and we sell the lots. we're planning on keeping at least one of them and doing our own house on there, but we're not builders, in other words. We look at the whole thing and we see the need for people to be able to get to the BLM. We understand that. And we could care less if people walk through and take their dogs for a walk. We don't care about that. But what we are worried about is if you buy a house in there, whether it's a vacation rental or you're just living there, whichever it is. Do you want a bunch of razors busting in front of your house back and forth? Do you want them raising up some dust that gets in your pool or whatever? I don't know what all the scenarios to think about. So what has been proposed and what we would like to do is make it a man gate that you walk through. So two people can walk through, or you can take your dog or whatever. But the razor thing, I don't know, ATVs, I'll call it ATVs. We don't know how to get around that. We only know that people in Rio de Janeiro like to use that, but also lots of other people like to use it. And I don't want to have security out there to watch that happen. To keep it from happening, you know. I don't know if you live there, so you see the traffic that goes through there. It's unbelievable. And as I've been working with the engineers and staking it and surveying it, all that, I've been out there a lot. You've probably seen my car, but it's a big traffic that goes there on ATVs. And I own a couple of old ATVs and I love them. I love to ride them and I get it. But I don't know if I'd want a trail of them going past my house every day. And that's why we're happy to have a walking gate, but not a gate where trucks and ATVs can go through.
Let me ask a question.
Mhm.
So Heath, do you see any problem with that?
Not at all.
Okay,
Not at all. So if I remember correctly, and I don't have the plat right in front of me, but does it show, John, a easement? I think,
Yeah, yes, there is an easement. It is for Alan Lee and their family members, because they own all that property back there a ways as a family, that they can go back there and water their cattle.
Mhm.
Because they run cows out there, I guess, several months of the year, and they have to access it for water. And of course, if there's a problem or whatever, so that is there, and that has to be in place. That is in our agreement when we purchased that ground from them. That was in our agreement, and it's on, the easement is on there. But it has to be wide enough for them to get a big truck through to haul hay or water.
so,
They're allowed past our gate.
Yeah, we can't. Sorry, I forgot that part.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We can't guarantee that the lease will open that up for anybody other than them. That is between them and
Open what up?
that easement that they have
Oh,
to water their cows. There's going to be a gate there that they have to open.
Or through their land. is what I would say.
Yeah, or through their land. I can't guarantee that people can have access through their land either.
Okay,
Only
so
through ours.
I want to make sure you're talking about Alan Lee, or are you talking about Ryan?
Sorry. That's a lot of lease. I'm talking about Alan Lee's family. They
Okay.
own the ground behind it, and
Yes.
then it becomes BLM, and then there's some Sitla ground.
I just wanted to I just
Yeah.
want to verify which Lee family
Yes.
are you talking about?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
well, I get, Gene, to answer your question, I guess if I understood, I don't know if the final plat shows a easement across any of the lots or staggered across two lots. As long as they designate clearly on the plat that it's a pedestrian only easement, then they can put anything like balusters that are locked at the bottom where that can be taken out if needs be, but that a razor can't go through. It would just need to be noted as such on the plat. And then if it is non-vehicular, then they can take whatever steps, either them as the developer or the association that is in place for all the owners of those homes, they can block it in such a way that only foot traffic, pedestrian traffic can get through.
Well, it's not noted as being just a pedestrian easement because of the fact that Alan needs to get back there for his cattle. And they will have cattle trucks sometimes.
Okay, but and I'm not sure if I understand the ownership. Are you saying for them to go through the easement area that's been given to Alan Lee, they would have to go over Lee property, then hit BLM?
Yes,
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so
And.
I don't
so
know if
that-
there's anything that John can do about that. I mean, he obviously has a contractual obligation to the Lees to give them this easement so they can access for watering and pasturing their cattle and stuff like that. But if some member of the public needs to go across the Lee's property to even get to the BLM, then I don't think that there's any obligation, or we shouldn't be necessarily dealing with it in this subdivision per se.
okay, that's not what we're talking about.
Okay.
Alan has never, as long as I've lived there, and from what I understand, he has never prevented anyone from crossing his property to get to the BLM land. That's never been an issue. It's just now with this subdivision, and this was going to be an exclusive easement for Alan, then nobody was going to be able to go back there. And, a lot of us bought our houses there in Rio de Janeiro because it was attractive. There was the BLM land, we could go out there. And this was a big selling point for most of the houses. And in fact, I think it's going to be a selling point for these short-term rentals too. And there's many people in town who have gone out there for decades. And so we just wanted to see what could be done.
Yeah.
to
Well,
let that still happen.
That's a great point, and sorry if I misunderstood. I would tell you that you could put plat language on that plat that made it an easement to the Lee family and a pedestrian easement to the public. And John works with, I could draft that language, or John works with plenty of good attorneys that could put the language that needs to just be printed on the final Mylar, so that it's very clear that the aspect of the easement that is given to the public is pedestrian only. So that way that they could, if you've got something that's wide enough to drive a big truck through, they could put 2 or 3 of those in-ground balusters that have the lock points at the bottom that Lee's would have a key to. They could unlock them, pull the balusters out, and they could drive a truck right through it, put them back down in, lock them back down, and then the public could only walk through it. You couldn't get razors through it and things like that. That's a fairly common way I see those types of easements work.
Yeah, we wanted to have Alan have a double gate, and then right next to it, a man gate
Okay,
that is always open, and Alan's is.
that's a great idea. That's an easy way too. Yep.
And there, so that Heath, there is another way to get to the BLM and Sitla ground, but you have to go down past kind of down past the Virgin Falls Park and get on that road that comes back around. So there is another access and easement there. The reason I know that is because we had to deal with we didn't have to, we were happy to deal with the feller from Under Canvas
Mhm.
and Red Bull, so that they could get back to that ground, so we were able to show them that there is another access.
Yeah. Well, as long as you're setting aside area for the easement to the Lees, might as well make that. I like your idea of having a double gate so that Lees can get through it, keep it locked, they can unlock it, and then you have just an open pass through for public that sounds great.
And it would. There's a fence that's going in on the back side of this 10 lots. So that cows don't wander into someone's yard.
Yeah,
On that fence, it has to be a pretty substantial fence, not just. Railroad. Fence like the one that's there now, if you've seen it, but. So that would, all along the back side of that, it would have that fence along with his gates and the man gate. And Heath, is that something that we can, if we get approval now, is that something we can put on the Mylar
absolutely.
before recording?
Absolutely. That's not substantial. Doesn't need to go back to planning commission. It's simply a new condition that council places on it that they want to have that easement expanded or identified to being a public easement only. And, or I mean, as to being a public pedestrian easement only. Sorry. And yeah, that's very simple. It can be part of a motion to approve today.
We have someone from the city, I don't remember who it was, from the planning and zoning that said. They've seen them where you have a little rise that you go over to go through the man gate, but I don't think that would work for this. Situation, because we need to provide handicap access, so you can get through there in a wheelchair or whatever, so I don't think the rise thing. I don't know what they call them, but I don't think that would work.
I don't know how far someone in a wheelchair could go.
I don't know, but I don't want to be the guy who didn't let them.
John doesn't want to mess with the ADA.
And then the other thing that no one asked me to address, but if I'm up here, if you don't mind. There was something that was brought up by Wyatt last night at the Wyatt Lee about the planning and zoning that I thought was something to think about. If someone comes to Zion with their family to stay, right now they can go up and rent tents or covered wagons or hotel rooms, and they're like, I don't know all the prices, but Wyatt used $350 a night for tents and covered wagons. And you get 2 people in them. So if you bring your family and you got 6, 7 people, you could be paying $1,500 a night just to get your kids to Zion. When you could also put that same amount of people in a house for half the price. And that is something to consider. I mean, it may not be important to everyone, but to me, it made some sense that I thought, and why I brought that up. If you're bringing your family here, it'd be nice to be able to pack them in a house rather than $350 and make it intense. So it's just something to consider.
I got some questions for you, if you don't mind switching gears.
Yeah.
I've never been that type of person who likes enforcing stuff on other people. Like to voluntarily work with developers. It's always the way I try to work. You heard what Paul is requesting as an amendment. How do you feel about putting these 2 items in your CCNRs to say you can't have rooftop decks and we want off-street parking rather than the town? I mean, we just still put it in, but I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Our CCNRs had some parking stuff in it.
Okay,
Anyone read through our complete CCNR?
the other thing,
Once.
What did you read about parking?
There's a lot.
no, I just wanted, since he was asking if you have any objection to the suggestions brought up by Paul, do you have any objection to the issue brought up by Keith about adding an ability to evict guests?
I think it's awesome.
If they violate if after multiple things, they can just be there. Okay,
If someone's acting bad enough that it's bothering neighbors, especially someone,
right next door to me.
right, yeah. Why wouldn't you want that in there? Get rid of them. And I think I mentioned this to you last time I was up, but my sister is putting one next to my house, because in our CCNRs, we're in the county, and we when we got that subdivision approved. Years ago, I did that 123 years ago. We wrote in there and the CCNRs and the county approved it, that if you live in the house. Or you are on site. You can have a vacation rental. I don't know what the city calls that.
Residential posting.
Posting, okay. So she's doing that. They have a camp trailer thing inside of their house. When the people come and stay, they're staying in that. And I had an agreement with my sister because she told me it was happening and I'm the one closest to her. I said, if it gets stinky, I'm gonna come over and talk to you. And that's how we worked it out. Even if she wasn't my sister, she was just a neighbor. I'd do the same thing. And I would hope that if someone did come over there and be a stinker, I don't know how else to say it, if you're gonna be rude enough to bother neighbors, that we can work on that and work through the management company so that A, it doesn't happen, B, they get evicted, C, we lose our short-term overlay. If you have to pay a price if you're gonna not follow the rules. So I don't have a problem with the suggestion on parking. I don't have a problem with that. The only thing I don't know about is the decks, because we had a guy, I don't know if anyone knows, we had a guy in the meeting last night that wants to buy one of those lots. Him and his wife showed up because they want to know if we were getting approved. And he doesn't want to have short-term rental. He wants him and his wife to live there. They're very well-to-do individuals and they want a house by Zion. So should I be able to tell them they can't have a rooftop deck? I don't know. It's a tough one.
Homes designated short-term rental.
What's that?
Don't it be for homes designated for short-term rental?
The problem is every home in there is
Yeah, it
designated
wouldn't
as
be
that,
allowed.
but somebody can live in it. So if this gentleman buys it from him and then 2 years down the road sells it to somebody that does short-term rental, we're back in the same boat. You can't make the debt go away.
No, you're just gonna run it and get out of short-term rental.
I'm sorry to do that though. I don't think you can do that because the overlay is on the zone, or it's on the subdivision, not on.
I'll make a condition of approval on the designated houses of a short-term rental, and that those are the only ones that stay short-term rental.
Is there anyone in Rio that has a deck on their house?
No,
No,
They can't see.
My steps.
the answer is no.
My steps.
the two-story house
The two-story, the only two-story home. That's rented out.
is right
Here,
past
mine's
Lauren's house. Right past Lauren's house is a two-story house.
Yeah, it's a patio.
It's a patio.
Second house on the left.
They have a patio. on the second patio.
Yeah,
The answer is no.
they,
No, we don't need decks.
No, we won't pass that.
No, you're talking two different things.
We're talking.
You're saying you don't want it to where some houses can be and some are not, just in the entire subdivision. He's saying, how do you feel about doing the rooftop decks or not doing rooftop decks?
We're not going to,
You don't want to. Okay, this is actually his deal. I'm the supporting factor, so. Dads do for their kids, right?
But you feel good about the other changes that were suggested, the parking, the immediate eviction, and the pedestrian easement
Yes.
condition that we're gonna add.
Yeah, those are all suitable.
Okay.
I will add this, though, I believe that, and I could be wrong, because we have 3 subdivisions currently going throughout the county. That our roof requirements won't allow for a flat pitch on the whole house. So we're not, if there is a rooftop deck, it would be maybe a section above the garage or something like that, not the whole, they're not flat roof because we want it to look semi-like Rio based on, not having to be sore thumbs.
Our plan from the beginning, and I stated this in the beginning, we want those houses to look like Rio de Janeiro.
I just want to know what your thoughts are on it. I'm still of the same opinion that I think we need to have our strength at the front end on your management company and on the enforcement. And then you don't have the problems.
And then when, Heath, did you need us to make the designation on a management company? Because I have Jeff Lee behind us and he can decide on his, but Mr. Christiansen is on his honeymoon in Europe. And I don't know if I can get him to decide right now.
I don't think you.
No, we don't need the designation now. It just has to be a unified, it has to be the same property management company for all homes in the development. And so whenever you three get together and all agree upon what it is, then that's just fine. It doesn't have to be now. We would probably need to have that determination about the time that someone is getting a certificate of occupancy for the first house out there.
Oh.
Okay.
Mhm.
The other thing I was going to tell you, John, while you guys were talking, I pulled up the CCNRs that Jeff sent over to me. It does address no recreational vehicle parking on the roads, but it doesn't have anything about normal vehicles. So I do think that is probably a reasonable condition. That's quite a bit of a health safety traffic congestion issue. If you've got too many cars on road and you can't get fire trucks or ambulance past or anything like that. So
Travel trailers, none of anything else.
yeah, I mean, right now your CCNRs are restricting that. Like you can't put a big travel trailer, you can't put even a boat, I would say, but it doesn't address someone who pulls up with, 7 different Suburbans because a big family's coming to rent it, and you got them on both sides of the street and you can hardly get a small car through the road or something like that. We just want to make sure that there is a fair amount of off-street parking, and I will tell you that is fairly common. Most municipalities, they do have a requirement based on bedroom or square footage of off-street parking spots.
Do you want me to meet with you to put that language in there, or do you want me to have our attorney do it, or what?
Yeah, just have your attorney put something in it, or
Would something, Jeff Staples, would something to the effect of, across the board, no matter the outside of the house, be, adequate to say 6 stalls at minimum, and that's including garage space
Are you asking for each house?
on their individual lots?
But Jeff, I don't know how big of the house is that, and you're gonna sell lots and you're not selling a finished house product. So what if someone came in and built a substantial house that had a lot of bedrooms, not a lot of common area in it, and maybe 6 might not be enough based off of that. So I appreciate the idea. It's just going to be simply something that we're going to have to check off when they come in for a building permit. Okay, you're building this house. It's going to have 7 bedrooms in it. You're going to need to have, you can count your 3-car garage. So there's 3 stalls. You can get 2 in a driveway. You're going to need to have a pad to the side of the driveway for an extra 2 stalls or whatever, and that's all they're going to have to factor into their plan before they get a building permit.
Last question for you. I know some discussion was had about a 1-level home.
Yes,
Are you guys still able to doing that?
yep, on lot number 1.
I don't have any other questions.
Sounds like we might be ready for a motion, Mayor.
Sure, Lauren.
Now, I would suggest that the town council put it as a condition of the approval rather than just relying on the CCNRs, because the CCNRs can be amended at any time. Developer can change them on whim.
I completely agree with Lauren. It's a condition of approval, but that condition is that they also put that into their CCNRs. We don't enforce private CCNRs, but we want to have it as a zone change condition of approval. And that condition is that they can't do it and they have to actually put mirroring restrictions into their CCNRs so that their HOA has some teeth to enforce it too.
So Paul, are you ready to make the motion?
Actually, I don't want to make a motion and I'm gonna vote
Oh,
against.
okay.
As it is, but I'll help whoever makes the motion, because I am gonna propose an amendment that I know will fail, and that's all right.
I think if you, I was just gonna ask, would you be willing to do dual amendments to where we can vote on them individually?
Yeah.
I know, I'm not.
No,
willing to vote on
no, I intended to do separate amendments. Yeah, because I wanted to make sure, that it's clear. So, no
Okay.
problem.
So after, okay, go ahead and make your motion. The motions,
Am I making it? Well, I'm gonna make the motion and you can make your amendments. I make a motion to approve the STR overlay zone change for signage V 2148 A 1 B 1 A. From, which is currently residential, to add the STR overlay zone. Do we need a second before we do?
Need a second.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, I will move to amend the motion to require that there, as a condition of approval and to be incorporated into CCNR's requirement that there be 3 off-street parking spots. And if more than 4 bedrooms, then an additional parking spot for every additional 2 bedrooms or fraction thereof.
so we're gonna do this individually.
Well, you need a second first on that, and yes.
I'll second that.
Now,
Now call for a vote on the amendment.
Okay, and remember what I said,
what's that?
Are you gonna add your other amendment?
No, we'll vote on this. And
We're gonna do them one at a time.
however, remember what I said at the start of the meeting, that everyone's going to explain why their vote is the way it is. So keep that in mind as we vote on each amendment.
Well, we're just, okay.
Okay. So I'll call for a vote
This is a vote on the amendment.
about the parking. Okay, so Paul,
And the parking requirement helps relieve congestion on street parking and provides for the safety of the residents.
Jean,
I'll vote for that and feel like it's in the developer's best interest, the town's best interest, as well as whether it's short-term rental or otherwise. I've seen homes in Reno that have 50 families living there, so
you see homes where?
in Reno,
Oh, Reno, I thought you said Rio, I was gonna say that's not. Okay,
lots of.
okay, Jean, Leroy,
I vote yes on the amendment because I think the parking would be advantageous to the community.
Misty,
I vote yes on the amendment as well for the safety and the best interest of town and developer.
okay, so the motion is amended to include the parking issue. Next amendment,
I have a second amendment. I move for amending the amended motion to include that the CNRs be amended. This be as a condition of approval also of the short-term rental overlay, that the CNRs be amended to allow for the management company to have immediate eviction for guests disturbing the peace or other violations of the CCNR or SCD regulations.
Yeah, Paul, maybe say other nuisance violations.
That's even better. Thank you, Heath. I like that. Other nuisance violations.
I'll second that.
okay. So now we will take a vote on amendment number 2. So Paul, we will start, I'm gonna start the same way each time it starts, Paul.
Because it allows for immediate action, which is something that I was hoping we could start to incorporate in a future regulation amendment, so I appreciate his suggestion for this, condition.
Jane?
I vote yes, I think same thing, strong rules up front and giving the management some teeth to be able to enforce problems.
Leroy?
I vote yes, for the same reasons.
Okay, Misty?
And I vote yes, because immediate action is, and then there's a problem.
Say that one more time so we
Immediate
can,
action needs to be taken whenever there's a problem. Because it's-
I just want to be sure the microphone got you.
You want your mic.
I can speak. No problem.
I have, Mayor, one more motion.
Yes.
Which I suspect will die for lack of a second, but I'm gonna make it anyway, so the record's clear. At the condition of approval and incorporating into the CCNRs, I make the motion that, no rooftop decks on houses that are designated for the short-term rental. There's a dice for lack of a second.
I was gonna say, I can't second, because I'm not voting. Okay, what about the access, the easement language for public pedestrian? Okay,
Make a motion to amend that there is, in addition to the Lee's right of way, that a pedestrian right of way for private, non-commercial foot traffic be added to this. Is that correct, Keith?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I actually like that, private, non-commercial, easement for ingress and egress. I think that's fantastic, because you're right, we don't want like people using that as like access for tours or anything else like that out to the BLM property.
I'll second that.
okay, so we will take a vote on this amendment to the motion, and we will start the poll.
It's a good amendment for clarification.
Yes, and definitely, I think the more access the public can have to the outside land, the better. We're constantly restricting what people can know, so it's a good thing.
Leroy?
I vote yes, I use it as public access. Maybe that's a conflict of interest.
Misty, and speak loud.
I vote yes, and I feel like we're repeating ourselves, but I will say that yes, public should have access, but it's also in the best interest of the leagues and the developer to have those gates up for safety. So,
Okay,
So now it'd be proper, Mayor, to call for, unless there's any other amendments.
I'm deciding whether there's one more amendment that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yes, but I can't make the amendment.
I'll make it
Which one are you thinking?
yours.
Yes, okay,
I'd like to amend the motion to state that the developer agrees to build a one-story house on lot 1, pending the completion of a 45-day waiting period for referendum or other issue. For the benefit of the mayor to not lose views and for residents along that edge to not lose their views.
any seconds on that motion? Really? I guess it
Well,
fails.
Yeah, I want to hear from the developer.
He already,
You said that you already said you were doing it, right? So-
Our clarification is that we're happy to put that in the CCNR on record, whether it's passes or not. Where we can dictate the house place, that's gonna be up to the person who buys it. But looking at it as people who build a lot of homes that aren't general contractors, the goal or the hope would be that they use the majority of space toward the back. It's almost half that the adjoining lot. But we can't dictate where they're gonna build. I can't do special stuff.
I understand.
So I'll second it, but it seems almost like we don't need to put that on there, but I will all second it.
I think it's important.
Best to be in writing.
Okay.
So vote, Paul? On the amendment,
Yeah,
okay, and why?
I will vote aye because it is an amendment that was suggested by the developer and it does protect some of the view sheds.
Jean?
I'll vote yes, because I think this is the kind of compromise and trying to work together that we need more of in the town. This benefits the developer and it benefits the homeowner.
Leroy?
I'll vote yes, because the developer agrees to that and there's no problem with that.
Misty?
I vote yes for the same reasons.
Okay, so now we're ready to vote on the entire motion. Yes, Keith,
Yes, that's right.
do we need to do a second motion on that or no?
No, it's been moved and seconded and each amendment has been moved and seconded and voted on, so. It's time just to call for the vote.
Okay. So I cannot be the one to, well, I'll call for a vote on the entire motion with the amendments as we have voted on them. Paul?
I am gonna vote no on the motion, which has already been indicated. My first two reasons have been mitigated, they haven't gone away, but they've been mitigated by the amendments that we have today. Here's the reasons I'm voting no. The short-term rental overlay will not contribute to the general well-being of the neighborhood and community. Hulu 60.2C8A. The short-term rental development will be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity or injurious to property and improvements in the vicinity. Hulu 60.2C8B. I don't think we've done enough to affect the noise and some of the other issues that were occurred, but today's amendments really help for these two amendments. Other two reasons are the short-term rental development is contrary to the general plan, chapter 6, housing. It will contribute to the increase in housing prices and the decrease of availability of housing stock available for long-term rental. And 4, the short-term rental is contrary to the general plan, 8.03A5, in that it will not encourage affordable housing options for families to move to Virgin and securing the sustainability of long-term residents. That's my reasons for this one. And I would note that this applies to this particular short-term rental overlay, and I will evaluate each future short-term overlays on the particular facts of that submission. So, no.
Before we continue on with the rest of the vote, I have a question for Keith. I don't suppose it matters that we have the proposed ordinance here and we have not yet assigned it a number. Normally we assign it a number when it comes to the town council. But I just realized that it does not have a number assigned. Will that make a difference?
No, it's not fatal.
Okay, thank you.
In the other 3 municipalities that I represent, they almost always do ordinance number 2022.XX and then assign it in order as it comes next. That's just an administrative, it has no effect to the ordinance itself.
All right, because right now ours is 2022-XX. I just want to make sure that wasn't going to be a problem. Okay. All right, Jean, your motion, your vote and one.
I'm an aye. I think, listening to Paul's reasons, I think I'd like to address those being part of the reason that I'm actually for it. As far as injurious to residents, I think that's a very relative term. Is its location where everybody wants it? No. But we don't get to pick who moves in next to us. when they own property sometimes. That's just part of having, not owning all the land around us. I think it benefits the town very heavily, specifically when we look at our infrastructure and our needs to finance the fixes for the problems that we have. I know this last week we had 3 pretty decent water breaks in town. We've got aging streets, aging water lines, and this goes to the bottom line to be able to help that. I think the general plan took into account short-term rental subdivisions, otherwise they would have been removed from the ordinances long before the general plan was written. I feel like this is likely to end up, everybody has their prediction. I feel it's likely to end up that at least half of the homes will end up selling to permanent residents. The economy continues to drop. It's pretty hard to make a living on just a single short-term rental, whether it's a home or not. I can tell you that from experience. It's a nice little income in the pocket, but there comes a point where you weigh out and say, am I making enough on this to pay the mortgage, or is it better for me to just live in this? And I think, my opinion is, I think we'll find that people are going to buy these to live in them. Maybe some will be short-term rental, but I don't think it's as big of a moneymaker as it used to be. And those are my reasons.
Leroy,
I vote, yes. This, I live in Rio de Zion and I don't, see that it will, affect me at all. My experience when I've used, short-term rentals is, it doesn't indicate that it would be injurious to anything. The general plan, I go along with what Gene said. This was put in as part of the general plan. The plan was aware of it. It was a compromise to people that didn't want short-term rentals at all. Now, so they would put in into a subdivision plan. I think the economy will dictate whether they're short-term rentals or whether they become permanent residents. And I think my own opinion is we're reaching a bubble. And I think it's going to burst and we'll see the economy take care of this. Those are the reasons I don't guess.
Misty,
Okay.
speak loud.
Okay, I vote yes, and the reason I do is I do feel like they've met the conditions of the chapter 60, but also I have on the side done a little homework and called a few people around and talked about STRs with like Kanab as an example, because my uncle was the mayor. I called and discussed it with them, and I'm of the same mind that a subdivision is one of the better places for an STR overlay because of the fact that they're putting in homes, and these homes can be purchased by people who just want to live in them. They're not just going to sit vacant, or it's not going to, they're not popping up random around the area and controls it and puts it in a certain area. So I'm going to vote yes, because I do feel like these homes, if the rental market drops, there is a use for these homes afterwards because they are in a residential subdivision. So I will vote yes.
Okay, so the vote is 3-1 in favor of approving this ordinance that is applying the short-term rental overlay zone designation to the Zion's Edge subdivision. So the motion passes.
Also, you should note that the vote, it has the mayor recusing herself from voting too.
I was wondering if I should say that,
Yeah.
that the vote is 3-1 because I recused myself due to my conflict of interest on this topic. All right, so finally, we are at item D on the agenda, which is the discussion on the decision being appealed by John Healy for the conditional use permit against the Labrie project near Desert Gardens. I would have moved, just so everyone in the room is aware, I would have moved this item before C. I would have moved this up in priority, John. I would have had us already talk about this before the subdivision. But we were waiting for Heath to come in. And so I apologize that everyone waited, through this whole thing on design veg subdivision so that we can get this copy. Because the bulk of the people here are here for item D. So, Misty has declared a conflict of interest on this item, so
I recuse myself from it.
yes, you recused yourself from the discussion because of your previous service on the planning commission when this conditional use permit was granted. So, Heath, what are we to do? Because we were waiting on a letter from you. What are we to do on this? I debated, I'll tell you honestly, I debated Sydney, I put this on the agenda because I wasn't sure if we were really ready to issue our decision because we were waiting for the letter from you. And I thought it was better to put it on the agenda. And if we didn't have the decision to issue, then we could continue it to the next meeting. But if I did not have it on the agenda and you came up with your letter, then we wouldn't be able to discuss it. So that's why I went ahead and put it on this agenda.
Yeah.
So what are we gonna do?
Mayor, let me tell you this. After the hearing and the deliberation of the council, I was given instruction and I have worked and prepared essentially the body of a memorandum decision that mirrors the instruction I was given by the council. I have actually taken the opportunity to share that with Councilmember Louis simply because of his experience as an attorney and having some experience in this. I wanted his feedback on it. I do have, and I accept essentially all of the suggested changes. Paul went and did some legwork to fill in a couple of dates that I didn't have in it, but I'm prepared unless there has been a change in the council's opinion or direction to me in the deliberation. I can read essentially the decision portion. There are some there's an introductory section of the memorandum decision that I will dispense with, but if the council would like, I'm happy to read the decision and the findings of fact, and then I can send that over. Mayor, you can execute that, sign that on behalf of the council and give it to Mr. Ely, and that would trigger any sort of time frame for him or the city or the town, I mean, to appeal the decision.
Is everyone okay with that?
I am.
Yes.
Yeah, he's been one be long enough.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so the decision of the council is on account of the permittee, and Mr. Labrie and his entity is defined as the permittee on account of the permittee's voluntary withdrawal and surrender of the lodging conditional use permit and the acceptance of the same by the town council at the hearing. The appellant's appeal as to the lodging conditional use permit is hereby dismissed on the grounds that the same is moot in that no such permit currently exists. Although the appellant has standing to assert his appeal based upon a showing that he and his property interests stand to be adversely affected by the service station conditional use permit, the town council lacks subject matter jurisdiction to hear an appeal of the service station conditional use permit, as appellant's appeal was not filed with the town timely pursuant to VULU 16.01 subsection G7, which requires all appeals of a level 2 conditional use permit to be lodged with the town within 15 days of the determination of said permit. In this instance, the service station conditional use permit was approved or determined as that term is used in Vulu, on March 29th, 2021, at the Virgin Planning and Zoning meeting. The nature and scope of the service station conditional use permit as found in the conditional use permit application was available for inspection and copying by the public at least 10 days in advance of the March 29th, 2021 Virgin Planning and Zoning meeting, where the service station conditional use permit was determined as being approved. At that meeting, the public, including the appellant, had constructive, if not actual, notice of the conditional use permit being sought by the permittee and had the ability to articulate many of the concerns he now sets forth in his appeal. Appellant is deemed to be on constructive notice, if not actual notice, of the issuance or the determination of the conditional use permit when its consideration and possible action is properly noticed pursuant to Vulu 16.04 G subsections 1 through 3. Accordingly, the appellant's appeal of the service station conditional use permit is dismissed on the grounds that the appeal is untimely and thus the town council lacks subject matter jurisdiction. And in reaching that decision, the planning commission, or excuse me, the council makes the following findings of fact: that the permittee is the owner or beneficiary of the subject properties. The permittee applied for a conditional use permit or a series of conditional use permits in 2021 to construct and operate an automobile service station. Permittee is the recipient of a level 2 conditional use permit and which was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on March 29th, 2021 for the construction and operation of a fuel station on 3.88 acre parcel of subject property. The determination of the service station conditional use permit was made by the Virgin Planning and Zoning Commission at a public meeting after a public hearing conducted after being properly noticed 10 days in advance. Permittee is also the recipient of a level 1 conditional use permit as determined by the Virgin Planning and Zoning Administrator, and that at the hearing, appellant has withdrawn that permit. The town set the hearing on appellant's appeal for September 13th at 1 p.m. and gave notice to the public as well as the appellant and permittee. On September 8th, 2022, permittee through written letter to the town withdrew. Sorry, we have a duplication of facts. A hearing of over 2.5 hours was held on September 13th before the town council. Council member Misty Baird recused herself as she was the chairperson of the Planning and Zoning Commission that heard the issue of the service station conditional use permit. At the hearing on September 13th, the town council confirmed withdrawal and surrender of the lodging conditional use permit through permittee's legal counsel and accepted the same. At the hearing, appellant stated he was appealing the 2 conditional use permits on March 16th, 2022, but was not appealing the planning and zoning's decision on March 29th, 2021. So again, the same conclusions of law as what the decision is just set forth below. And so with that, if you want to go ahead and take a motion for the council mayor to approve that decision, I will send over to the town clerk recorder an execution version, and you can sign that, and it needs to be issued to Mr. Ely officially once voted on.
Okay. On the agenda, we wrote discussion.
Okay.
We did not talk about voting on anything. Can we still do a motion and vote or no?
Yeah.
And the reason I put discussion is because we had not seen anything and we weren't sure really where things were.
No.
So we put discussion.
I apologize. I should have, once I got Councilmember Louis' comments back, it would have been proper to probably circulate a draft copy of that memorandum decision. All I was trying to do is act as a scrivener to put it in proper written legal form.
Right.
I
just want to make sure, I mean, we can do a motion and vote. I just want to make sure it's not going to.
Well, if you want to just simply have a discussion, I can send over the version, you can sign it, and then probably we need to have it on the next council agenda to ratify your issuance, but as long as we feel comfortable from the comments of the council today during discussion only, that you can sign it and issue it and put it, we just need to have the vote ratified because it needs to be not the mayor's decision, it's the council's decision.
So are you guys, the rest of you okay with that? That it gets, the actual vote will take place at the next town council meeting?
What are we voting on? Is it just the letter? or-
Yes,
Okay,
and our decision.
so I thought the decision, okay, we didn't just do that.
We didn't vote just because. we
Gotcha.
didn't close the-
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, I do have, so that's what we will do. We will continue the vote to the next town council meeting.
Do we have to give you the authority to sign a letter?
That will be at the next meeting. When we do that,
But you're gonna issue a letter.
no,
Mr. Ely's essentially been advised of the decision. It's as if we ruled at the conclusion of the hearing. He's now heard it orally. He's just going, the form that you guys are going to approve and authorize the mayor to sign. Once it's signed and provided to Mr. Ely, that triggers his appeal period. So,
okay,
So then we're just ratifying it at the next meeting.
Yes,
The decision has been made.
yes.
okay, so there is one thing I want to discuss.
Okay.
We talked about in the spirit of compromise, we talked about trying to address the town addressing on its own an issue that was raised by John at his appeal. So that even though the ultimate decision is that that he was too late with the appeal, we didn't see why we couldn't address and compromise on some of the concerns that apply to 1420 and widening the road, correct? Is that not what we discussed? Oh, you weren't there. You weren't there, but we did discuss this, and so I wanted to bring up that even though we have decided that the appeal was too late, we are going to try to address one of the complaints that was in your appeal that had to do with the road, 1420.
And we couldn't guarantee anything other than to try to work.
What, you can't hear?
I had trouble to begin with, but
The way I remember it is that we couldn't guarantee anything to John, but we would work to find a compromise on that road.
And so what we did, we checked with the fire department, correct? Checked with the fire department to make sure, we discussed whether or not it would be possible to put like an emergency gate on 1420 and make everyone go to Sheep Bridge Road to get into the gas station. And the fire department said no, they would not approve such a thing. There had to be an entrance off 1420 and an entrance off Sheep Bridge Road, both. And so because of that, we talked about potentially addressing your concern about the fact that the road isn't wide enough and actually putting in a left turn lane. Is that not what we talked about?
Well,
Yeah,
Gene, I think the discussion was working with both the developer and UDOT about a couple of different possibilities, maybe modifying construction drawings to widen that road a little bit, to have a right-hand turn lane, also possibly putting an island that would prevent on So that I think the way that people could, I can't remember, we talked about whether it be entrance only onto 1420 or something like that, to try to help with or a deceleration lane to help with the stacking issue.
All right, Gene was going to talk about it.
Okay, so there's a lot of different options, but the developer is not bound to make a turn lane. 3 different engineers said otherwise, but the town wants to try and maybe do something to mitigate the concerns as far as traffic coming in and out of there. Then we discussed an island. The concern with an island is, yes, it will stop people from being able to turn in there, but when they make the turn there and they realize they can't, they're gonna come down into Desert Gardens to turn around and come back.
Yeah.
So that was kind of not optimal. When the developer puts in their drainage system, they're gonna have to tear up 1420 to put in a larger culvert through there. And it would be an opportune time to work with them as the town if we wanted to expand that street to include a 3rd lane while it's torn up. That was discussed. The problem would be that is something that the town has to pay for. So that was what was discussed. No decision was made, but we wanted to see if we could come up with a way to work with the developer to do the road when it's torn up all at the same time and save everybody some money on it.
And also where that road connects in with UDOT, we need UDOT's review and approval of widening and adding that 3rd lane or turn lane on 1420. So there's a couple of moving parts.
Okay, we weren't sure if John, if you heard what Keith just said. He said the other thing is in order for us to address widening the lane, we also need to get UDOT to approve. Okay, go ahead.
Regarding what is this on?
Yeah.
The standard clearly states that if it's going to be used as a commercial intersection, it must meet the design standards for a commercial intersection. Currently, that asphalt is only 30 feet wide. Currently, the site plan shows that there is a right turn lane on 1420 West, which basically makes 3 lanes 10 feet wide. Totally, completely inadequate.
We just said we were going to work to widen the lane.
And it would have to be to the standard, at least the Washington County standards, okay, which is a little bit different than Virgin standards, but Virgin standards is what I have reported on.
Okay. And so do you remember what the Washington standards were that you were?
John, we have to do it to our road standards. Any road within our municipality is governed by.
I'm sorry, Mr. Snow, would you repeat that?
Yes, we would need to have it comply with our standards, not Washington County's, because any road within our jurisdiction has to comply with our standards and specifications, not Washington.
Okay. Thank you for that. Virgin standard, okay, is for 62-foot right of way and 45-foot width of asphalt. The standard does not go into further detail about how that intersection would be developed, but I would believe that entering off of Highway 9 onto 1420 West, there would be 2 lanes. Primarily because the ratio to make that turn off of Highway 9 onto 1420 West has to be wide enough for a large vehicle to make the turn. Additionally, a turning movement, a left turn movement within that intersection creates big stacking issues. So there needs to be 2 lanes entering 1420 West, and 2 lanes exiting 1420 West.
John, if you're talking about four lanes, basically 2 in, 2 out, at 45 feet of asphalt, that makes those lanes a little over 11 feet wide. In your mind, is that satisfactory?
I believe so.
Okay, now that would probably be on 1420 all the way back until where it turns and enters into this development. Everything past that can go back to the normal residential standard, correct?
I was thinking to the property line. That way there is access to the right-hand turn lane on 1420 west prior to the entrance to the development.
Yeah, and John, I appreciate, and we're just simply, this is a discussion, we're trying to get your input. Obviously, John, this is something that we would need to have the town's engineer and someone within his office who specializes in traffic engineering play a close analysis, but yeah, I think what the council is trying to share with you is that notwithstanding their denial of your appeal because of the timeliness issues, they want you to know, and they want the residents of Desert Gardens to know that it didn't fall on deaf ears, and that we are, there is the intent of the council to work with the developer, work within itself as the town and UDOT to try to find ways that we can mitigate these problems. Because John, frankly, I appreciated the academic nature of your appeal and how it was based on, in a lot of ways, on traffic engineering science and the concept of it. Some people just want to come in and make appeals that say, I think, and yours was much appreciated in that sense. And I think that the council appreciated that too, John. So I don't know.
Let me add to that if I will. As I said in my presentation, an appeal wasn't my case. I would also think at this time it's good for me to at least make it known that it was the council's decision during the hearing that they wanted to hear my appeal. They bypassed the requirement for time. Okay. I think it is, I think it's wrong to say that my appeal was filed too late because it was never really posted. I also need to point out that planning and zoning did not issue a conditional use permit. They approved the idea with conditions. It was nearly 1 year later that the permits were actually issued. So that would have been March, I believe the date was March 15th of 22. That was never posted. The only way an individual would have known that it was done is if they'd gone to the office every single day, pulled out the file and looked for it. That is not an acceptable method. Especially when many CUPs in the past have been posted on the Utah Public Information Site, which is what we became used to seeing. I very much am in favor of a compromise. Definitely, if 1420 West is going to be used, then Virgin's design standards need to be applied. I'm good with that. I also need to state that among many other issues that I brought up during the hearing, the UDOT, or excuse me, the Utah Environmental Quality Approval and Concept Letter stated that if that building permit had not been applied for within 1 year, and it was dated February of 21, and that permit is still not in the file, it's suspicious that it has even been applied for, and it would have to be reapplied for. That permit is to build the water treatment plant, the underground large. I don't have that definition correct, but it's for the underground water treatment plant. That has to be addressed. There are bonus issues within that letter that have to be addressed. The letter states that there are 4 owners and 2 lots, and that's what the bonuses have been figured at. The plot plan or the site plan shows 4 lots. I hope I don't have some of this confused a little bit, but there are 4 lots, 4 private individual owners. And this will have an impact on the open space. And the calculation for building bonuses need to be based on the facts. It also requires, environmental quality requires a written document stating any changes to the application must be filed with their department. It also states that there will only be 2 gas pumps. I believe the site plan is saying 8 gas pumps. Again, a letter to environmental quality letter or department must be filed for any changes in that application. Those issues need to be addressed as well. So yes, I'm happy. I also, let me say this too. The permit that was voided was a very good move. That should have never been issued to begin with. I'm glad that was done. The wording on the existing CUP does not include both lots. And there are conditions on the CUP that apply to the entire development. It's a little bit awkward, but it's important that the wording on the one existing CUP be corrected as it is written on the application. Because Mr. Snow brought up letters of withdrawal, I'll say again, there is absolutely no basis for a CUP called fuel station lodging units, or right now I can't remember Mr. LeBree's wording for what he called it, but there's no application, there's no basis for either one of those letters, and it's not. Okay, we are dealing with the 2 CUPs that were issued on March 15th of 2022. I'd like to just say, see so many people who are here from Desert Gardens who are just as concerned. I feel it's fine to make the corrections to the CUP. I feel that since the fire department insists that there be 2 entrances, that it is a compromise that 1420 West be brought up to commercial standards. I'm going to ask the citizens if they agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I have a question.
Yes.
The fire department, do we have a letter from the fire department indicating that?
I don't think so. I think it was just an in-person meeting.
And who participated in that meeting?
Steve LeBree and John, I don't know his last name, somebody from the fire department that looked at it and said, you got too much going on here to have a single entrance.
And who from the town?
Nobody from the town.
Nobody from the town.
Developers couldn't figure out.
And so we haven't received anything from LeBree or the fire department indicating that was the ruling.
Nothing in writing.
Okay.
Okay.
And another question is, well, you know, I appreciate that your willingness to work with us. How's this information going to be conveyed or shared with the residents of Desert Garden? Because this isn't it's out of planning and zoning's hands, so I don't think it would be discussed at the planning and zoning meeting. I don't know that you're gonna talk about it at council meetings, so how will that be conveyed? And then my last question is, well, it's basically a moot point, but in the August town council meeting, Jean, you recused yourself from voting on this and participating in this. And during the hearing, you asked questions on a couple of occasions and you remained for the discussions. So if someone could please explain that situation.
I can do both those if you like. I recused myself from the level 1, which was withdrawn. Recusing yourself from the voting is different from participating in discussion. The state law, I believe, and Ethan correctly says that we have to declare a conflict of interest, but doesn't mean you have to withdraw from everything. Now, with the level 2, I didn't have anything to do with writing of that, and I participated in that all the way through. As far as getting information out, this is the discussion that's gone back and forth with residents many times, but there's one of me and there's 700 residents. It's easier for me if you guys want to get together and have a meeting on a regular basis. I'll be happy to tell you where things are at, what we're working on. But for me to call each individual and tell you what's happening with the project as it goes, it's not plausible. That's
Well,
really
I
not
don't
possible.
think anyone would have that expectation. I don't think they would have the expectation that you schedule a regular meeting or you schedule a briefing saying this is where we're at with whoever from the town as well as the Greens. And make that information available to a group of the garden residents at the same time, so that we're all hearing the same thing at the same time and have an ability to offer our input.
Sure. The town, I mean, as we work with a developer, I'm making sure that they're meeting the standards, the engineers making sure they're meeting the standards, attorney, whatever, whoever's involved with this build as it goes along. They have to meet these standards, but at each step of the way, that stuff becomes available at a grant request. That's only going to give you the paperwork. If you want to know what's going on, there have to be some kind of regular meeting where I can tell you, okay, this is where we're at.
Right, and what I'm thinking is that what might work, Wanda, is maybe, and you guys can chime in here, but maybe you guys designate a couple of representatives from from Desert Gardens who would attend these meetings. Instead of having a whole big group, that you guys could have a couple of representatives, and then you can convey the information to everybody else and know what questions you guys want to ask, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, Cindy.
But I don't think, I think them to come to the podium and state their names, they can be on the camera and on the.
Wanda Leverett.
Cindy yesterday, I would state, or I would request that we put this in writing. Possibly while things are going on, maybe monthly, maybe every 2 weeks. I don't know what the timing would dictate, but I think it could be issued to each homeowner within Desert Gardens. You still gonna have a committee to communicate, but I think every person, whether they're part of the select group or not, should be hearing what these decisions are and communicate them as such. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Pat.
Pat Galvez, we got an email a couple days ago or yesterday from Crystal about the water being turned off in Desert Gardens on the 26th. And that's a very easy communication. All residents in Desert Garden could be made aware of that simply. Thank you.
Wait,
Made aware of the status of the debris project and updates.
oh, in the same manner.
In the same manner,
Got
it's just an email to the residents of the neighborhood.
Okay.
Thank you.
When you sent out that email, was that to the whole town or was that just to Desert Gardens?
Only just to Desert Gardens, I sent them out a couple of emails, if you're on the Desert Garden email list.
Okay.
I also warned them about the
Water. Okay.
Kingsbridge Road closing,
Okay.
but if I don't think I have everybody in there.
Okay, we'll get it. Okay. Yes, John.
Just to reiterate what Patrick said, and I sent an email to you.
Oh, yes, we've taken care of it.
Okay, we
But
got a couple weeks to learn this and it's there.
It's been taken care of.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay, and I'll talk to you after the meeting and I'll tell you more.
That'd be fine. Question. Not just for the Bridge project, but for any of the projects that go on. There are stipulations or there's ordinances. That I wonder just how they get enforced or who's seeing to it that they're followed through. In particular. I'm gonna talk now for the fourth time.
Okay, I'm gonna time you.
The building permit shall be posted on site. Big letters. 4 times I've mentioned it. Pat brought it up one time himself.
This is for the LaBrie project you're talking about?
This is about LaBrie.
Okay.
It's still not there this morning. Simple. But it's an example of somebody not doing their job.
How do you know it's not there? Did you talk to the manager or the person that's running there? Because typically that stuff is not weatherproof, but they keep it with whoever's on site. The building inspector, when he comes up, they have to have it for him to be able to examine it. So to say that it's
There
not
would be
there,
a post with a pipe on it.
that's one way to do it. A lot of businesses don't do it that way. They have it with them in the truck while they're working because nothing's weatherproof. They just have to have it on site when they're constructing. I understand the law and that's how it works. Mr. Landscaper comes up and he requires it then to give him the stuff for him to examine so he can look and make sure they're doing the plan as proposed. But they don't have to put a hole with a waterproof tube there. They just have to have it on site when there's construction going.
So it's posted on site.
I understand, but that meets the requirement.
If that's how it is, then I can understand that I don't understand. Okay.
I'm just saying, we're trying to do the job.
But-
It's not like we're trying to find some way to sneak around. That's-
And you guys talk at the same time, our person just will never be able to do it.
Maybe that explanation first time would solve it, okay?
But I gotta know, John, you never reach out to me personally to ask me the question, so how would I know that you have?
You hear what I'm saying.
Anybody wants to know anything, my number's public, call me, I'll walk you through what I know, but I cannot assume to know what you want to know.
Hey, no, stop,
It's simple.
no more,
It's very simple.
no more. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
Second.
Adjourn. Okay, you don't know.